Hello and welcome back to my channel. This video is a serious topic for me and I do hope you are able to sit through this and listen to what I have to say. However, I am putting a disclaimer out there that if topics of abuse and so forth are something that you find emotional distressing or triggering, please do not watch this video from here on out. But if you are here, I'm going to talk about organisational abuse specifically and in regards to an episode of Panorama that came out last night about an undercover journalist going up to Whorlton Hall in County Durham, which is a hospital that carries out 24-hour support for people, adults with learning disabilities and on the autistic spectrum. This is something that is close to my heart. It's something I feel a lot about and that I need to talk about, because this is not the first time Panorama has released an episode regarding this. This, I think, is the third time in the space of 7 years, and each time it unsettles the UK, and for good reason. Quickly, I want to run through what types of abuse are covered within the healthcare sector in the UK. So we have physical abuse, we have domestic abuse, we have sexual abuse, we have psychological and emotional abuse, we have financial and material abuse, we have modern slavery, we have discrimination, we have organisational and institutional abuse, we have neglect or acts of omission, and we have self-neglect. They are all the main categories of forms of abuse that we are taught about within the healthcare sector. Now, I have done 2 NVQs, a level 2 and a level 3. Within health and social care, these NVQs have now been renamed as QCF qualifications, I think they're called, but I've done my NVQs years ago. So abuse legislations, laws and so forth are something that I have gone in depth for regarding my job role in the healthcare sector. So in 1996, there was an Employment Rights Act released, which covered something called the whistleblowing policy. So in 1998, that was updated a little to introduce the protection of those that are whistleblowing. This is very important because when you go into a healthcare sector job, you are taught each time you start a new place. It doesn't matter if you are taught about your company's policies. You are retrained in whatever the healthcare role is. You are given company training. You go through all the different laws and legislations. You go through the whistleblowing policy so that you know what is what, that you know what to do and when to do. This is part of good training. This is part of training your staff. And unfortunately, when a company lacks training or good quality training, then forms of abuse can happen due to the neglect of training. But this does come under organisational abuse. We have governing bodies over here in the UK. Our governing body is called the CQC-Care Quality Commission, and each year they hold an annual review of every single healthcare setting within the UK, and they have to tick all the boxes. They go through all the paperwork, they interview selected members of staff, they interview selected people that are being supported. They look at everything and then they come out with the overall rating, or good or extreme. Anything under good, then you are given a couple of months to sort yourself out before they come back in and do another review. However, in 2011, Panorama had gone undercover, had sent an undercover journalist to a residential home in Bristol called Winterbourne View, where residents who are on the autistic spectrum were being abused by staff. A nurse who was working there had whistleblown, but nothing had been done about it. There were multiple calls from people being supported made to the local police authorities that were not listened to.
I can't believe that she's had to go through this. I really can't. months and months. Make with them pay money. You might have get on it.
If this is about your family, I've already told you before, it's poison. She's just being a dick. Do it from there.
You what? Go get in there and do it, yeah? Do anything that hurts. Punch like a woman, get in there. Punch me and see what happens, I'll put you through the floor.
Rosemary once. Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh yeah, she went to go past me there. Push. Right across the chest. Down. Wham. When she's laid on the floor.
Go sit down. Go sit down. It's not hard. I think it's so funny.
What really upsets me about this is the victims, the people that were being abused, were not listened to when they cried out for help. They didn't ask a general member, they didn't go to the family, they went to the police, and the police ignored that. They did not take these complaints seriously. Anyway, Panorama went undercover to Winterbourne View, and they let out this episode, and it sent shockwaves throughout the whole of the UK, pretty much throughout the world. And it showed people abusing their position as support workers, people that didn't have the training, people that were trained to work in prison settings using those restraints tactics with vulnerable people, which is a no-go. You're not allowed to do that at all, not allowed to do that. This is why people in the healthcare sector are not trained to do that. We have selective training in certain ways to help ourselves get out of positions, defence tactics and so forth, which is fine because you're using the less restraint as possible needed, and you're not holding or pinning that person down. Psychiatric hospitals are slightly different to other healthcare settings. Can't really talk about on the procedures they use there, but those procedures are not used in hospital or residential settings that Panorama have basically exposed. Now, when Winterbourne View came out, CQC promised the UK that they would work better, they would reevaluate what they were doing, and because of this, instead of having just a solely professional board do their annual reviews of each healthcare setting, they would have advocates involved, and these advocates would be someone that was receiving care, obviously not of the setting that was being reviewed, but just a person in general who receives some form of care. The other advocate would usually be someone that has an next of kin or family member receiving care. So you've got two advocates there, one or two advocates that are able to talk to support workers, are able to talk to people receiving care. And it has shown a track record that people are being more honest towards these advocates on how they feel regarding a company than the professionals, which is all well and good. But the CQC promised they would cut down and this would never happen again. Yes, reports of abuse within organisational settings have gone down, but as last night's shown, not by much. So, last night's episode was on Whorlton Hall up in County Durham for a 24-hour support hospital for people who have learning disabilities and autism. And by God, this really shook me to the core. This got me more than the Winterbourne View episodes. This was harrowing. This made me cry. This got me angry. I'm telling you, I work in healthcare myself. You do not come into this job because you need a job. You do not come into this job because you need money, because this is the type of job that if you come into it for the wrong things, there is a high chance that you will become an abuser, or you will be neglecting the people you support, which comes under abuse. You come into this job because you want to work here. This is the job you want to do. You have the heart for it. So when I was watching this Panorama episode, you knew that those people working there didn't have the heart for it at all. They abused their power. They abused their position. I mean, there's a couple of instances that really got me. Near the beginning, there was a group of support workers standing outside in the morning having a cigarette, and they were talking about one of their PWSs, person we support, I'm going to call them PWSs. There was a PWS hanging out of a window because they were outside, congregating outside, making noise, had woken them up. And they started taking the piss out of this person. They called them derogatory terms, and I was like, As someone that is a support worker that works with people on the low functioning end of autism who have extremely challenging behaviours, or any form of healthcare setting I have ever worked in, I would not talk about the people I support, my PWSs, in that sense at all. I would not do it. I would not take the piss out of them, and that I have a high respect for them. That got me. Then the next thing was, there was another support worker, and he was inside the setting, and he was talking about a female PWS, and he was calling her a fat CUNT, kept calling her fat, kept calling her ugly, you know, said she had this big mole and stuff. I was just like, I didn't know what to say. She didn't like male support workers, so her person-centered care plan said female support workers only, but she had male support workers, and when they agitated her, they would bring more men in. So at one point she had 3 or 4 men in her room, and it was sending her into meltdown. I was like, why are you doing this on purpose? And I thought it was hilarious. Then she was scared of balloons, didn't like the sound of balloons, didn't like when they would threaten her with a balloon. They would ping the balloon, or they would say, you know, do you want me to get a balloon? And she'd be like, no. She would go into meltdown. They sat there and laughed at her. And then they would sit there and have sexual explicit conversations in front of her. Like, really, like, unreasonable force tactics. Restraint, reasonable force. You only use reasonable force once in any work setting, whether or not it be police, paramedics, healthcare, residential home. You only use reasonable force once, and the lesser way of restraint. If that reasonable force works and that person comes down, absolutely fine. You then work on beginning to heal that relationship you have with the person you're supporting. And with reasonable force, you should only be using it for about a minute, if that, and then you step back. If you have to continue using reasonable force on someone and they have not calmed down, and their extreme challenging behaviour is getting to a point that it is bad, you call the police. And the police then have to take that into their own hands. The restraint tactics they were using at Whorlton Hall were for bouncers and security guards. This wasn't for a residential setting. It wasn't. They weren't using it properly. They were literally barging in like it was a pub brawl. And then they had 5 to 6 different people kneeling on them and then laughing about them. And then they would be punishing these PWSs by taking their personal belongings away from them. Just, it's pure torture and abuse. I got upset about it. I really did. I felt so sorry and upset for the families and the parents having to watch this, for these people being supported to be abused in that way, to have their lives turned upside down by bullies. And I hope the authorities harshly sentence these abusers, because what they sentenced the Winterbourne View support workers on was just a tiggle. After 12 months, I don't even know if the guy actually, the ringleader, got served 12 months, which was half his time for good behaviour. He was only put away for a couple of years, come out after 12 months or just under, or whatever, or 18 months for good behaviour, and he's walking around free. No, when you sentence harsher. You put that lesson out there that this will never happen. That if you get caught doing this will happen. Our authorities need to clap down. There are many reasons why abuse happens. Some of it is because of poor or lack of training. The right people not being employed, and just anyone being employed. Management and so forth, not keeping an eye out, supervision's not being held. Heartbreaking. But also, I live by the phrase, see something, say something. The amount of times that people have witnessed abuse and never done anything about it is horrendous. Kids and adults in healthcare settings have lost their lives because people didn't speak up. They didn't speak up because they thought, well, someone else would do it, or that's not my place to do it, or I'm not getting involved. You know, it's an act of omission. It's a form of abuse in itself. You know, if you think, oh, it's okay, you know, the next person will report that. They don't. We've had children die from abuse because 30 different people were like, well, nothing to do with me, I'm a stranger, you know, someone else will report that. No, you see something, you say something. And it really gets to me, it really does. There is something called a person-centred care plan, a care plan. Everyone in care has a care plan. It is personal to them. It is designed for them. It gives that person being supported a choice, a freedom. Every care plan is different. Every care plan is unique. This brings diversion, equality and so forth to someone's care needs. Everyone working in any healthcare sector has to read these healthcare plans, especially when you're working in a residential setting and so forth. You have to read these healthcare plans. It will tell you what their likes are, the dislikes, what they want, what they don't want, so forth, allergies and all that, religious beliefs, dietary needs, what they like doing, what they don't like doing. It gives you that, and it is very, very important. And to you not to follow that personal set of care plan, that's disgusting. There is an Equality Act there for a reason. If you cannot treat the people you are supporting with respect, if you do not want to be in this job, then please do everyone around you a favour, do your team a favour, do the people you're supporting a favour, and leave. Leave it to the people that want to be there. Thank you for listening, folks. Thank you for sitting through this. I know this is a bit of a longer video. Thank you for your understanding as well. I'm sorry I got heated. I'm passionate about this, and this Panorama episode last night really got to me and is actually still really upsetting me now. But if we could take anything away from this, take this. See something, say something. And I will see you all in another video. Bye.
All of this, you must show all those clips. You must show people. I don't care what you show with me. You must show people.